is another edition of Editorial and I welcome you to it. My name is Sandra Asante, broadcasting from Canada. Today, we'll be deeply focusing on the tripartite alliance that is stabilizing the Horn of Africa. So stay tuned. I'll be back after the break with the details. You're welcome back from the break. So the common political vision of the leaders of Ethiopia, Eritrea and Somalia threatens to throw the region in turmoil. Eritrean's President Isaias Afwerki, Ethiopian's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and Somalia's President Mohamed Abdullahi posed during the inauguration of the Tibet Specialized Hospital in Bar, northern Ethiopia on November 10, 2018. 3 years ago, a wave of political change swept across the Horn of Africa. In Sudan and Ethiopia, popular protests led to a change in leadership and what may assume were democratic transitions. Ethiopia and Eritrea ended their 2-decade-long rivalry, which Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. The peoples of the Horn of Africa were euphoric for what many thought would be a new chapter in the region's history. Today, contrary to expectations, mass atrocities, interstate wars, and autocratic entrenchment have become the defining feature of the region. Over the last 6 months, several international conflicts have re-emerged, notably between Ethiopia and Sudan, between Eritrean and Ethiopia's Tigray region, and Somalia and Kenya. Egypt and Sudan are also threatening Ethiopia over the latter plans to proceed with the second filling of the controversial Grand Ethiopian Renaissance dam on the Blue Nile River. With Ethiopia alone, 2 significant insurgency has been launched in this period, while ethnically motivated mass atrocities continue to take place regularly. The Horn of Africa is caught in a spiral of violence where domestic and regional conflict overlapped and fuel each other. The conflict and rights violation in recent months are not isolated incident, but part of a broader pattern of regional disorder, in which non-compliance with fundamental international legal norms is a central feature. So for destabilizing trends, the first indicator of the creeping anarchy in the Horn of Africa today is the recent proliferation of territorial dispute and overall discard for state boundaries. Eritrea, for example, has begun occupying part of Tigray in northern Ethiopia and issuing Eritrean ID cards to residents. Ethiopia is making territorial claim on in Sudan's Fashaga region, and in response, Sudanese officials are raising claims on part of Benishangul Gumuz in Ethiopia. Within Ethiopia, Abiy has supported the Amhara regional states' annexation of parts of Tigray regional states. Sensing Ethiopia's weakness, Djibouti recently announced its intention to exploit the Awash River in Ethiopia. At the same time, Ethiopian politicians are publicly making a dynasty claim on Eritrean territory. Finally, Somalia and Kenya have exchanged threats over contested maritime space. While there are nothing wrong with the territorial demand made through legal means, what we see is recent trend of state trying to take over territory by force in order to create a fait accompli. This has led to the contagion effect, where one active breach of a normal territorial integrity encourages the other actors to do the same. The second trend is the increased prominence of foreign troops and mercenaries in domestic and regional conflict. Abiy Ahmed has outsourced counterinsurgency in Eritrean soldiers in his war against Tigray, as well as employ them in the border conflict with Sudan. Somali President Mohamed Abdullahi has also used Ethiopian troops against local opponents in Somalia. At the same time, Somali soldiers have allegedly fought in Ethiopia. The main problem with these forces are their legal ambiguity, their tendency to commit extreme human rights abuses, and their unique capacity for fueling intercommunal tension. Eritrean President Isaias Afwerki is the central driver of this trend. He has built an entire economy centered on seeking economic rent for mercenaries and military bases. The third problem is the growing disregard for international humanitarian law. Over the last 6 months alone, Ethiopian and Eritrean forces have engaged in systematic ethnically cleansing, rape, starvation, and massacres on the unprecedented scale. Eritrean troops have also destroyed refugee camps in the Ethiopian, hosting Eritrean refugees and forcibly to return thousands of them back to Eritrea. So far, this has not had any serious repercussions for the culprit, and when faded with criticism, Abiy and Afwerki have been dismissive. Finally, today, the Horn of Africa is also characterized by the sharp declined multilateral diplomacy. The regional body Intergovernmental Agency for Development has been excluded from most of the conflict and peace processes. It has notably been absent in the Ethiopian-Eritrean peace process and the war in Tigray. Instead, leaders have chosen to structure their cooperation and manage conflict outside of institutional frameworks and through personal channels, which is a significant obstacle for preventive diplomacy. So now let's look at the domestic politics fueling regional instability. The destabilization of the Horn of Africa is primarily a function of the domestic politics of Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Somalia. Abiy, Afwerki, and Abdullahi forged the tripartite alliance in 2018 with the aim of molding the regional order according to their domestic political ideals. The three leaders are opposed to federalism, the accommodation of ethno-national adversity, and institutionalized governance. Instead, they prefer a centralized state under the command of a strong man who rules by fire. Afwerki, the godfather of the alliance, has ruled Eritrea without a constitution or a single election for almost 30 years. The source of his autocratic longevity is a universal and indefinite military conscription policy that has contained most of the youth in military barracks and compelled hundreds of thousands to migrate. The condition have been popular rebellion practically impossible. I beg your pardon. In Ethiopia, Abiy was selected by the political party to transition the country to democracy in 2018. However, using COVID-19 as a pretext in June 2020, he postponed elections and imprisoned his opponent. His attempt to concentrate power and suppress Ethiopia's various international groups has led to civil war and looming famine. Abdullahi was supposed to prepare Somalia for its first direct election in several decades, but instead he has been trying to centralize power in the federal government, which has resulted in conflict with various regional governments, notably Jubaland. His term expired in February, and followed the example of his regional allies, he extended it for 2 more years. This has initiated a constitutional crisis and armed conflict, which has eventually forced Somali lawmakers to cancel his term extension. He is the first president since the Somali state-building process began in 2004 to try to remain in the office after his term expired. The regional trends that had today destabilized the Horn of Africa emanates from the domestic condition. The effort to break federalist forces in Somalia and Ethiopia have led to spill over the conflict across state borders and have fueled regional rivalries. The members of the tripartite alliance also manage interstate relations in the same way. They govern their domestic politics. They conduct diplomacy through personal channels and resolve disputes through military means. The alliance behavior is particularly destructive because of its long-term consequences. For example, territorial conflict, ethnic cleansing, and rape as a weapon of war sow the seed for intergenerational grievances. In Ethiopia, Abiy's policies have already revived secessionist sentiment in Tigray and Oromia, and the extent to which Ethiopia will continue to exist as one nation after the war is now unquestionable. In the last 6 months alone, these conflicts have displaced more than 2 million people in Tigray, and the European Union envoy to Ethiopia said this may be the beginning of one potentially big refugee crisis in the whole world. When what is unfolding in the Horn of Africa is a significant threat to international security, halting the ongoing descent into anarchy requires, first of all, concerted effort to compel leaders to respect their constitution. In both Ethiopia and Somalia, Abiy and Abdullahi must be pressured to enter into political dialogue with their contenders to reset their democratic reform processes. Secondly, the use of foreign mechanisms in domestic conflict must be deterred. In particular, verification mechanisms must be established to ensure the withdrawal of Eritrean troops from conflict across the region. And finally, perpetrators of serious violation of international humanitarian law must be held accountable in order to pave the way for a reconciliation process, but also to deter others from engaging in such acts. Thank you so much for having the time of watching the editorial. My name is Sandra Asante. You should have a great day.